Hi, and welcome back to part 2 of We're Gonna Open Our Etsy store this weekend. Now, before we get to that, I want to show you something. It's not just because it's fun, I'm actually making a point. This is this wonderful little steampunk contraption I have. It's sort of an all-terrain steampunk vehicle with the balloons and the wheels, and you turn the gear and the things turn around, and it's just delightful. And children love it. And what I'd like you to do is give some thought to when you think this was made. This is a handmade piece, and I'm going to give you a little hint, or maybe it's a little misdirect. The word steampunk was not coined until the late 1980s. So keep that in mind. Here's our little steampunk contraption. When do you think it was made? Because we're going to be talking about this very subject when I come back and we get into our Etsy shop part 2. So see you in a minute. Okay, we're back. Now, when we left off last week, we had named our Etsy store, and if you'll recall, we had decided we were just going to come up with something simple and memorable. Doesn't have to be clever. It just needs to be something that is easy enough to remember so that your customers can find you again. Then we were going to gather up some items we plan to sell, make sure they're clean, presentable, etc. Etsy would like you to start with 20 items. I am not willing to set the bar that high. We're all just beginning, so I would say 6 is a good number. We were going to get them photographed. We were going to make sure that one photo, and this is going to be our lead photo, had a little extra background space, because Etsy's system of gallery photos actually cuts into that space a little bit, and we'll get into that in a second. And we were going to see about getting some shipping materials, not a lot, just a few, because I've got a whole shipping video coming up. And that shipping video is going to tell you how to get your supplies either free or low cost. And these are brand new, high quality supplies. So just be patient for that. That one's coming. But we may need something in the meantime, because let's face it, we're all hoping that we're going to be able to get some sales immediately. And that would be lovely, but it's not so lovely if you don't have a box to put it in. And we were going to give some thought to a dedicated bank account that would be used by Etsy for depositing your sales funds and for taking out the payments. Okay, so once you have your items, got your photos, lined your photos up, you've taken that primary photo and put it into their little thumbnail spot, and then you can adjust it, cut away that excess background. But obviously you need the excess background to take it away, because Etsy does crop it kind of close. So we're all set, and now we have to start describing our items. And here's where a lot of us are going to get into some confusion, because I'm going to give you an example. In fact, I'm going to give you a lot of examples. This is a mug. It's got biplanes on it. It's a cute little mug. I'm listing it in my Etsy shop because I think this is probably a good item to sell for Father's Day. It's not marked. I have no idea when this mug was made, so I have to look at this and make a determination, because it's not handmade. I didn't make it. I don't know who made it. It needs to be vintage, and Etsy defines vintage as pre-2000. So is this mug pre-2000? I think so. I base that on the fact that these earth tone colors, the beige, the brown, and even this sort of slate blue, were very popular in the 80s and 90s. So is it more reasonable to believe it was from the 80s or 90s than to believe that this was on a department store counter last week? I would say yes, and I'm comfortable with that. So, pre-2000. This is even more difficult. This is a handmade piece. It's signed on the bottom, but it's not dated. Again, we have those same earth tone colors. In this case, it's a sort of a medium brown and blue. This is a mold that was probably used in ceramics classes. People can take them as continuing education courses. They can go to ceramic shops and take these classes. I've known people who have done it. And molds like this have been in use since the 1970s. Could this be a piece from the 1970s? In my opinion, no. No, I think this design is much more likely to have come out of the 80s or 90s. Am I prepared to say 2000, pre-2000 as opposed to post-2000? Yes, I am. Would I say that on a paid appraisal? Good Lord, no. Because I'm just guessing. I just believe that it is more reasonable to believe it's pre-2000 than post-2000. However, let's take a look at this. This is a piece, and we filmed this. I picked this up at Community Aid with Jocelyn, so this purchase is actually on video over at the Crazy Lamp Lady channel. It's got a nice sort of milky, buttery sheen. It's not a high gloss glaze. It's very, very pretty. The decoration, though, is high gloss. And overall, it has one of those, Parisian apartment, shabby chic kind of looks to it. And that didn't become popular until into the 21st century. That was something that we started to see around 2005 to 2010. It's still popular now. Would I just look at this and say, oh no, that looks like it's pre-2000 to me? No, I wouldn't. But it's dated, 1972. So you can get fooled very easily, especially by these handmade pieces, because these pieces were created by individuals, probably not professional artists, although I think the person who did this was not without talent, but they were not skilled designers. They produced work that appealed to them. So this was somebody who just anticipated the Parisian apartment look, probably by a good 30 years. So you can't always tell. This is another piece. It's also got a matte glaze, same grape design. I picked it up at the same time in the same shop. Am I prepared to say this is pre-2000? Yes. And the reason I am is because its friend was 1972, and I can't help but wonder if they didn't come in on the same donation by the same artist. Am I comfortable with that? Yes, I am. And here's something very interesting. This little Cocopelli pot. This design became mainstream popular in the 1990s. Could this have been made yesterday? Of course it could have. The thing is, it could have been made 300 years ago, too. This is clay with a slip glaze. A slip is just watered down clay. If you actually carbon dated this, well, clay is dirt. It's as old as dirt. There's no way to actually say with any great certainty when a piece like this was made. So I'm going to go with the fact that this is a design that became popular in the 1990s. That satisfies me. We've got a few other pieces. This also is unmarked, this Nescafe World Mug. But as it happens, I remember the ad campaign. One of the great advantages to not being 18 anymore is you remember stuff. This is late 60s. The ad campaign, it was all over the television. Nescafe and their little world mugs. So I know when this was made. But this, no idea. This is a traditional Chinese design. It could have been made yesterday. It could have been made 300 years ago. Again, no way to tell. But I have to ask myself, if it could have been made at any point in the last 300 years, is it reasonable to believe it was made in the last 20 or in the preceding 280? So when you are looking to list items that are handmade or unmarked, the question you need to be asking yourself is not, is this vintage? Do I have reason to believe it's vintage? The question you should be asking yourself is, do I have reason to believe it's not vintage? Because the prima facie evidence, which is just basically the evidence on the surface, is these items have been purchased at flea markets, at yard sales, at estate sales, at thrift shops. They are used. They are not new. So going in, we have every reason in the world to believe they are vintage. The only thing that would stop us from listing it as vintage is if we had reason to believe it's not. So, in the absence of any reasonable evidence that it's not vintage, for example, a style that just was not around in the 1990s, I'm very comfortable saying something is pre-2000 if, in fact, I got it used at a yard sale, at a flea market, at a thrift store, because people tend not to sell, donate, or toss things that they've recently purchased. And this is especially true of handmade pieces, because handmade pieces often have sentimental value. They were created by the person who donated them. They were gifts. People tend to hold those things longer. So I hope that resolves the pre-2000 issue. I'm comfortable with it. And I hope you can be comfortable with it too, because it's logical to believe that the things we find in thrift stores are at least 10 to 15 years old. And if they are at least 10 to 15 years old, and like this, they have stylistic evidence that they may be older, I'm comfortable with it. After all, is there anybody who can say it isn't so? So, I think we can be fairly comfortable with this. By the way, while I was looking around for this stuff, this is a little bit of a digression. Some of you may remember that hideous Japanese katani style hair receiver that we saw at Community Aid last week. Well, I actually have one that's not only as bad, it's actually worse. Look at this paint job. I got this in a mixed lot of Asian porcelain when I saw a piece of rose medallion I wanted in the lot, and this came with it. I have no idea why I haven't thrown it away, but my goodness, is that bad. However, I wanted to show you some pieces of that style that are not bad, because I know I gave it a very bad rap in Community Aid. I think I said if you stuck the Hope Diamond in it, it would still be garbage. Oh, that was nasty. This is a well-executed piece. It's a set of 4 little egg cups, and I did want you to see this just so you understand it's not all junk. Now, this is not fine porcelain. These pieces were made in Japan after the war, sometime probably in the 1950s, after the post-war occupation. They were painted in homes by women and children. Um, it's they were not painted by talented artists, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. But some of them are very nice. They're well executed. The little egg cups are, and you can see the difference just in the painting of the lines alone. I mean, look at that. This, God, I'm tempted to say a blind 5-year-old did this, but I was a blind 5-year-old, and believe me, I'm no Rembrandt, but I could have done a better job than that. So not all of it is junk, and I just wanted to take a quick moment to point that out. Once you actually sit down to list your items, your vintage items will be acceptable to Etsy as long as they are pre-2000, and that's what this whole discussion was about. Your flea market and thrift shop finds are going to be largely items that are difficult to date. Now, there are a few pieces that are easy to date. If we have mid-century porcelains, that's going to be easy. If we have anything that's dated, for example, this piece, 72, very easy. By and large, you can't go too far wrong simply by saying pre-2000 if you're in doubt. So that's going to be the starting point, because they ask you that right away. The first questions are, did you make this? Did someone else make this? Is it a finished product? Is it a craft supply? How old is it? And then they're going to go into the description. What is it? Now, your description needs to say enough about your piece so that it can be easily identified, but you don't want to go overboard, because most of your description is going to be in the body of your listing. We've already talked about this. Feel free to steal my listings. Just go in, find something you like, and say, okay, it's my listing now, and change it up as you need to so that it's describing your piece, not mine. And feel free to use it word for word. I'm not going to sue anybody. I'm really not. I'm telling you, you can do this, because I know that's tough. And it's tough to do that over and over again, and to try to create new and interesting listings for every individual piece. And Etsy strongly encourages you to wax poetic about your stuff. Tell people how they can use it and so on. You need to describe it. You need to describe the condition. You need to make sure people know what it is. If there's damage, you need to let them know. If there's no damage, certainly highlight that, because that's something people will want to know. They need to know how big it is. They want dimensions. I find when dealing with porcelain, people like to know the weight too. Some pieces, Asian porcelain, not this, but just as an example, the lighter it is, the more desirable it is. A piece like this, the heavier it is, the more desirable it is. So I always list pack weight, unpacked weight, so that they know what it actually weighs, and they have a packed weight, which is going to tell them something about the shipping costs, and it's going to allow them to go to the USPS website and check out what shipping is in their area, which is pretty good, because it keeps us honest about shipping, and that's good for everybody. So the next thing you're going to have to decide is, do you want to charge for shipping, or do you want to offer free shipping? And I've used a mix on my site. Jocelyn likes to charge for shipping. She says it takes all the guesswork out of it, and she also believes that it's better for her listings if they come up at the lower price, the price that doesn't include shipping, as opposed to the higher price with shipping built in. I sell very expensive dolls on eBay. That's what I do. And I offer free shipping. I figure if somebody is going to pay me $400 or $500 for a doll, I can put a stamp on the thing. So that's sort of my default, free shipping. But I've used a mix, because This Etsy shop is going to be our workshop. We're going to find out what works better. And as I said to you before, I'm going to make the mistakes so you don't have to. If it turns out that free shipping is not a good idea, I'll be the one to sort it out, and I'll let you know. If it turns out that it is a good idea, again, I'm going to share that with you. So once we've started our listings and we've sorted out whether or not we want to do free shipping or if we want to charge for shipping, we're going to go to the next step, and that's the actual opening of the shop. Now, we spoke last week about whether or not we were going to use a dedicated account. I did. I'm glad I did, because when I said I want to open my shop, the first thing Etsy said to me was, we have your debit card on file. Can we use this to charge payments? And I was prepared for that, and I said, no, you cannot. And I gave them the debit card that's associated with the dedicated account I'm using for Etsy. A lot of people had written in the comments and said, Etsy will not take money out of your account. Oh yeah, they will. Why else are they asking for your debit card number? Once they have your card number, you are in effect giving them permission to take the fees out. They say, we want it for the fees. You say, here's the number. You are basically saying, oh yeah, help yourself. Well, I'm not exactly saying help yourself to my main checking account. I'm not comfortable with that. So they have their own little account, and if something goes wrong, I don't have to worry that, my checks are going to bounce all over the city. So that worked out for me. Now, once our Etsy shop goes online, we're going to start tracking this. We want to track how many people have visited the shop, and we want to just sort of informally compile statistics. I'm not trying to turn you into statisticians, but we do want to find out if people are seeing your items. And if they're not, we're going to want to find out why. So that's going to be what we do as we follow through. I think we've probably gotten off to a fairly good start. And I didn't want you to bite off more than you can chew. And I'm just going to ask you for one more little thing. And that is, as the weeks go on, try to add 2 items a week to your Etsy shop. It would probably be a very good idea and increase your chances of getting traffic if you could get your total number of listings up in the range of 30 to 40. But we're not going to do that all at once. Just 2 items a week. If you want to add 3 or 4, great. But 2 items a week, and eventually we're going to get there. We're going to build up. And now I think we should probably talk about what this is going to cost us. Etsy charges 8% plus 45 cents on every transaction, and that includes shipping. And let me explain how this breaks down. Your listing fee per item is 20 cents. So I list this. If it stays on Etsy, it could stay there for 4 months before they're going to rebill me that 20 cents. And that's only if I relist it. So 20 cents listing fee, sale or no sale. If I sell it, I pay 5% on this item, whatever I made for this, plus whatever I'm getting for the shipping, and I'm just a pass-through conduit for the shipping. It goes from the buyer to me, to the post office, but I'm going to get charged a fee on that too. And then, if we are in the U.S., and I'm going to have to specify that because their international viewers did write in and say, well, we don't have to do that. It's like, well, we do, unfortunately. We have to use Etsy payments. We can't use another system. If we want to use PayPal, can't do it. It has to go through Etsy payments. That is another 3% plus 25 cents in transaction fees. So that's where I get this total of 8% plus 45 cents and it's on the shipping as well. I think it's safe to calculate that your fees are going to be approximately 10% on everything you sell. Those additional fees, that 45 cents, and the fact that they're charging fees on shipping is going to bump that 8% up. Now, obviously, if what you are selling costs $300 or $400, it won't be. It will be much closer to 8%. But if what you're selling is like this little assortment of goodies, I don't think anything here is going to sell for more than $20. Yes, it's going to be close to 20. No, 20. It's going to be close to 10% total. So that's where we are at with our Etsy shop. Now, I have a shipping video coming up for you. Tomorrow, we're going to do the how to size your lampshade video, and that was just viewer request. They want to know, and I'm going to give it to you. And our little steampunk machine. Remember, the term steampunk wasn't even coined until 1989. That little machine was created and built in 1974. So the point is, you never know. Your guess is as good as mine, and I say we use this to our advantage, and we default in the direction in which we would like to default. If there's no reason to believe an item is newer than 2000, then we have just as much reason to say it is older than 2000. So that's what we're going to go with. All right, tomorrow, lampshades. Next week, shipping supplies. Okay, see you all then.